Okay, wonderful. Let's jump in. So today, welcome to the next webinar in this series of webinars that we'll be doing throughout the next few months. Now, if you didn't already know this, this will be recorded and you'll receive a follow-up email with a link to where you can access the recordings and then all the insights shared by PJ Howland today. So to get started, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate and value your time, and we appreciate the time that you're dedicating to joining us today, and hopefully that you'll find this very valuable, and if there's any questions that surface, we will allot time to answer those questions. So first, I'll tell you a little bit about us, what we do, and what we'll be talking about, and then a little bit about our expert today who will be walking us through SEO metrics that matter. So first of all, let me jump in. We are 90 Cent Floor. We're an award-winning digital marketing agency, and we work with clients in the enterprise as well as small, medium business sectors and across, as you can see, a variety of industries. We are a collection of strategists, and we provide a range of full-service capabilities, essentially everything required to create and execute strategies that produce bottom-line results from organic SEO, PPC, design and development, to copywriting and video production. Now, in today's webinar, we're going to talk about SEO, the cornerstone of digital marketing. Now, digital marketing is the strategy and process that connect advertisers with their audiences across digital channels. You already know this. Likely you're very familiar. You probably either dabbled or you work extensively in digital marketing. Now, the great thing about digital marketing and why we really love this platform at 90 Cent Floor is because it generates, on average, 3 times as many leads as traditional outbound marketing, but it costs significantly less, and that is amazing statistics. Now, with everything in SEO, from on-page to off-page to all the metrics that you could be considering at any one given time, it's really hard to know which actions will produce the results that provide a genuine return on your investment. Investment being time, but most likely money, bottom line value. Now, today we're going to be addressing those specifics. Now, what this presentation is not, I always like to just share what we're not going to be covering, is a tutorial on search engine optimization. Those you can find all across the interwebs, and we have loads of other content for that in our blog and in subsequent webinars in the series. And of course, the Moz Guide gives you a lot of SEO 101 tutorials. Nor is it about metric tracking and setting up. We will give you some very actionable items, but we won't be doing a tutorial on setting those up specifically. So for this case, and for what we consider to be advanced, kind of that advanced level SEO, consider the strategies and not so much the specifics. For specifics, you can always refer back to this presentation. You'll have a point of contact with us at any time. So don't get overwhelmed or inundated with all the information that you get today. If you feel like you are, then take a step back and consider that the specifics aren't as important as the strategies and the discernment that we hope to share with you today in order to up your game on that. Now, I do want to tell you a little bit about our expert today. Now, PJ Howland is an enterprise campaign manager here at 90 Cent Floor, and what that means is he oversees a team of marketers, content managers, designers, and specialists here at 90 Cent Floor, and works with some of our biggest brand clients and medium-sized clients looking to grow to Fortune 500 status. So PJ is our most proficient of technical marketers and digital strategists, and a resident expert in turning SEO tactics into duplicable and results-driven playbooks. So he is all about wins and bottom-line value. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to PJ today, and he's going to take us into SEO metrics that matter most and those that do not. So give us 2 seconds to turn over presenter rights, and then we'll have PJ jump right in.
All right. Can you hear me, Shantae?
I can. PJ.
Great. Okay, so that was a perfect lead up into what I wanted to open up with, and that SEO and content marketing is all about a campaign. It's a journey and it's a long road. And it should be seen as something that is not a day-to-day task, not even week to week or even month to month. It's a long-term playbook that requires long-term investments. And part of that investment means knowing what to track and how to track it. So, like all good webinars, I got to start with a cheesy quote, like Galileo, I guess this time. Measure what can be measured and make measurable what cannot be measured. I am focusing very heavily today on what cannot be measured, or at least what you thought couldn't be measured. So take, for example, a situation like this. This is something that anybody in the digital marketing world is happy to see. However, even with great increases that happen in a year's time frame, not knowing what caused that increase is almost as embarrassing as not causing the increase. So what a more powerful marketer will be able to say is the campaigns that specifically caused them. So that could be a link building campaign, more content was launched, specific keyword movement, and if that marketer were measuring those metrics, they would be able to see the effects of what their campaigns has done. So what I propose is two things. One, knowing what metrics to track is going to help drive a better campaign. But two, it will influence literally the campaign that you drive. Because if you're tracking the right metrics, you're going to be chasing after those in your campaign, and you'll craft a campaign that better targets them. So let me talk about something right up front. So there are macro metrics and micro metrics. The macro metrics that I'm focusing or not focusing on right up front are traffic, revenue, and conversions. Now my caveat here is these are the big metrics that we're essentially chasing after. And within those there are sub-metrics that are also worth covering. But what I'm talking about today is more the micro metrics that drive those. So my theory, and many digital marketers will back me up on this, is that smaller metrics are what move the bigger ones. And tracking those metrics will influence the bigger ones, because at the end of the day, everything marketing-wise is an equation. And knowing what values affect the first part of the equation will affect the result. So let me talk to you about our three big micrometric categories. So keywords, off-page metrics, mostly backlinks, and content marketing metrics. Now, before I get started into each of these, I want to make a few disclaimers. The first one is that I err on the side of measuring more. Some of you might not think it relevant to measure as much. I like data, so I measure more. The next piece is that I realize that different circumstances will require different metrics. Not every website is on the same playing field out there. Some are the little dogs, some are the big dogs. Some are recovering from some algorithm changes that harmed them. Some have gone through a site migration and are looking at other things. It really depends. But how I've crafted this is these metrics should apply to about 80% of websites out there. And I'm not capturing every metric out there. That's not the intent. It would take too long to cover that. And I'm not covering every tool out there to do it either. In fact, I'll be using Ahrefs primarily in this presentation. So Ahrefs, there's a lot of tools and platforms that do very similar things to that, but it's my favorite. I've considered getting it tattooed on my chest, but it's something that I'm not ashamed to say I like Ahrefs, so that's what I'm using today. And our case study client is going to be Mark's Daily Apple. Mark's Daily Apple is founded by a guy, Mark Sisson. Mark, if you're out there listening, this is for you. I like the brand, so I thought it'd be cool to use it as the case study here. So let's get started with keyword metrics. So what I've got here are some basic keyword metrics. Obviously, ranking is a big part of this. But what I wanted to go into is, rather than tell you about these, is show you them with Ahrefs. So I'm going to pull over here to Ahrefs, and let me grab marksdailyapple.com and get started here. So throwing it into Ahrefs will give us pretty much all the data we need. We just need to know how and where to find it. So starting with keyword metrics, we'll come back to this data right here. I'm going to start with organic search. It's going to give me loads of good metrics right up front here. And I want to start with some of the more simple ones, and we'll come back to what we see up here. The big one is top organic keywords. Right here, it shows us a good top 5 organic keywords that Mark's Daily Apple ranks for. I can see right here that Mark's Daily Apple has a good brand because most of the top keywords here are indeed actually his branded search name. But that also presents an opportunity for us that I can touch on later. Another piece that I want to talk about here is these two charts. So organic traffic and organic keywords. If you look into how Ahrefs tracks this, basically it guesstimates organic traffic by looking at the keywords that a site ranks for, calculating their search volume and the position that they're in, and basically guesstimating the click-through rates based on their position. So is this number accurate? Not really. And as you track this for even larger websites, it becomes less and less accurate. However, absolutely useful for the 30,000-foot view of things. One of my favorite metrics is organic keywords. You can see right here, Mark's website's gone through a little bit of a drop recently, with definitely some recovery in the last little bit. So total organic keywords is an awesome metric to track because it basically lets you know the quality of your content, or at least how Google sees the quality of your content. You might not rank well for every single one of these, 300,000 plus keywords, but as that number goes up, it's validating for site owners to know it's because of content going up. The other thing I wanted to talk about is featured snippets with keywords. So I'm going to stray away from this main page here and off to the left go to organic keywords. And this is going to pull up just about every keyword that Mark's Daily Apple ranks for. So there's a lot of different metrics you can play with. Volume is huge. Volume is one of those metrics that's here to stay, I'd say. Keyword difficulty is something that most every keyword research tool has out there. I would say it's useful only for the fact that it's useful to like baseline if one keyword is going to be easier than another. The caveat with this, however, is comparing Ahrefs keyword difficulty tool or metric with Moz's is apples and oranges. It's actually more close to like apples and like tow trucks. It's two very different things that just can't be measured together. But if you're going to use only one platform, it's a useful metric. Cost per click. Even though this presentation is on SEO research, a lot of people wonder why we at 97th Floor care about cost per click. And like Google AdWords and really any cost per click or pay-per-click platform is billions of dollars thrown into it every year. And that money can't be thrown away lightly. So pay-per-click managers know how much money to spend on certain keywords. So much money and data goes into that. And if keywords typically have a higher cost per click, chances are they're worth more. Somebody's paying that much for them. So I consider that a valid metric to track, at least when selecting keywords. So I'm going to skip these and go to features. Today's day for the SEO is maybe the most exciting time in the past few years because of all of the interaction on the different features that Google search offers. So my favorite right now is the Google's featured snippet, also known as the quick answer. So what I'd like to do for everybody that I work with is check out their featured snippets right here, and you can do that through Ahrefs. I'm going to click apply here. So you've noticed that number dropped in half, maybe even more than half. But what it did is it highlighted those keywords that have a featured snippet opportunity right there. So all of these keywords, from how to increase serotonin to does emergency work, are featured snippet keywords or opportunities. And to the right, where we see these quotes here, that's Ahrefs telling us you have that featured snippet. So to kind of prove that, how to increase serotonin, open a new tab. You can see right here, Mark's Daily Apple has that. But if you were to go to Primal Diet, this website, mnn.com, does not have the, or has the featured snippet. Mark's Daily Apple is ranking technically #1 on here, but they're not getting that that featured snippet. And you know, Mark's Daily Apple, or like Mark Sisson, kind of invented the Primal Diet, so that's something that they should grab. Actually, look here in the snippet, athlete Mark Sisson, but yet they're not capturing it. So this is a crucial metric for websites like Mark's Daily Apple, and really any website out there that is doing content needs to be tracking that metric. So let's go back to my my takeaways for these results. So rankings, absolutely useful micrometrics. My caution is to not set too many keyword goals. I see some people go down the rabbit hole of creating dozens or even as many as like hundreds of keywords that are on a dashboard, and when there's dips or movement along those, there's natural anxiety that comes with that. I suggest keeping your list to maybe a core dozen at most that you're looking at least at a daily level. Featured snippets, again, that's a must for this this age in SEO. Estimated organic traffic. I will say this, Google Analytics, or really any native analytics platform, is going to be better for you. However, it's really useful for competitor research. For example, if Mark's Daily Apple wants to see what one of their competitor sites are looking at, they can throw their website into Ahrefs and baseline on who's likely being more getting more organic visits there. Total ranking keywords. That's a snapshot at your site. You can also segment it for a page or a subfolder, which I'll show you in a different section of this presentation. Top organic keywords, again, that's a helpful snapshot at what's bringing in the most to your website. For Mark's Daily Apple, it was branded keywords. Keyword movements. So Ahrefs will also let you look at the movement that happens at keywords on a daily level. I'll say that that's really useful if it's one of your core keywords that you care a lot about, but keywords fluctuate. And if you're going after competitive keywords and you're sitting on a striking distance spot, so anywhere between like 4 to 15, you're at a place where it's going to fluctuate a lot. And I don't think it's worth the anxiety to be checking those daily. Instead, maybe set like weekly, monthly, or even quarterly goals for those movements. Keyword specific metrics like volume, difficulty, cost per click. Those are things that I've gone over. In my book, they're here to stay. And then results in the SERP. So those are those metrics that tools like Ahrefs will say something like there are 1 million results in this SERP. That's a vanity metric. As far as you're concerned, there are 10 people in that SERP because that's all that a Google user will see for the most part. So let's move on to off-page metrics. We can't talk about keyword metrics without going into backlinks. So there's a lot of different places here. I'd say that caveat I gave at the beginning where I'm not tracking every metric, this is probably the place where you guys will notice most that I'm not calling out every metric. And there's a reason why, because sometimes it just doesn't apply to your basic SEO campaign. So let's jump back over to Ahrefs and take a look at this. So I'm going to start right here and take a look at referring domains. So that's a pretty standard metric. Obviously, you want more referring domains. What I like to look at is over to the right up here, this section. We see referring domains in the sense of every kind of breakdown you could have as far as like do followed, gov, edu, links, etc. That's useful to know only to validate really where you are. It's unique per competitor SERP. I know a long time ago, .gov links and .edu links were like the best. People would dedicate a month of SEO strategy just to get one .gov link. And while I do think that there's value in that still, it's not something that I think needs to be reported on or anything like that as far as like a core success metric. Referring pages, however, is going to be a lot more volatile than referring domains. So you can see that mostly they follow the same trends here. However, the peaks and troughs are a lot more exaggerated in the referring pages. So you're going to want to keep a look at those to make sure that your peaks and troughs don't rise or fall too quickly, because that could be an indicator of a domain that's maybe linking to you too much, either dropping off or adding a bunch more links to you. Just something to keep an eye on. Backlinks as a whole, Ahrefs does an awesome job at making that scannable right here. You don't have to dig for that information. That's good to know. It's kind of more like a just finger on the pulse sort of thing. Do followed links are important to get. They're important to know how many you get. But ultimately, different websites are across different industries and different SERPs. And so while a 91% do follow ratio could be good here, like a 70% could be decent in another SERP. It just depends. So knowing that for the sake of competitor research is good. Not necessarily a success metric, though, I would say. So backlink type, whether it's text, redirect, image, again, that's something that's validating to know where they come from. However, it's not something that I think needs to be reported as a success metric. You would maybe want to keep your eye on if you had too many redirects or if those spiked for some reason. But even that is usually an indicator of something that can be fixed. The CTLD distribution, I'd say like it's helpful to know this, but websites are getting so diverse today that like knowing which C block or whatever your backlinks come from is useful if you're in a crisis situation and you need to figure out why your rankings tanked or why you got penalized in a certain way. So not something that's a success metric. And anchor text. Anchor text is something that is useful to know because it's helpful to know like how people are talking about you. So again, this is really validating, seeing that Mark's Daily Apple's big keywords were for phrases like Mark's Daily Apple, because that's how people are talking about this website. These are the top anchor text phrases. Same with the anchor cloud up here. So in certain circumstances, increasing anchor text for maybe a new product that you came out with could be huge for you. Like that could be exactly what you want. Or it could be a red flag, just depending on how it's being linked to you. So I could say either way on this. It could be a success metric, or it could be just something to keep your finger on the pulse on. So looking here, referring domains, possibly the most important off-page metric. Is something you've got to keep an eye on, especially if you want to stay competitive in your SERP. Referring pages, you need to know that to track the net amount of pages that are referencing you. Backlinks, that is a must for any SEO campaign. That's not news to anyone listening to this. Backlink type, potential for competitive research, not a success metric. Follow and no followed links, important, yes, but avoid going down that rabbit hole of hyper-analyzing those. I've seen clients with spikes of no followed links, and it turns out that they just didn't have a big backlink profile. They released a well-received press release. It got syndicated. They got a bunch of no follows. Chances are it's not going to tank their site, but it's helpful to know where they come from. CTLD distribution, again, like if your site's in bad shape, you got to keep an eye on that. And anchor text. definitely something to always be looking at and need to keep an eye on. So content metrics. This maybe is where I'm most excited to talk about my favorite metrics from Ahrefs, because you can do a lot here. So things like deliverables produced, that could be like blog posts that are set live on a site, estimated amount of traffic, ranking keywords, social shares, etc. There's a lot of metrics. I mean, you could go down the rabbit hole here. But let me hop over to Ahrefs, and I can show you some of my favorite ones. So we're back on Mark's Daily Apple. One of my favorite things is looking all the way down here at top 5 pages. So why I like this is one of the first places I'll look at when I get a new website. If I see a situation like this where the homepage is driving the majority of traffic, or at least within the top 5 pages, that's something that I'm going to want to take a look at. The positive with that is that, hey, like there's a great brand here and there's a lot of name equity on that. The downside to it is that for an editorial site like Mark's Daily Apple, you're not seeing that same kind of bump from your other pages. So the way that I see it is that there's some opportunity left on the table. I also like to compare the amount of estimated traffic with the amount of keywords. For example, the serotonin boosters page ranks for the most amount of keywords but brings in the least amount of traffic. Now that could be due to volume and a lot of other things, but primarily I see that as they're not ranking very well, or at least not to their full potential for those keywords. And Ahrefs is great where you can, if you'd like, you can dive into seeing these pages on a much grander level and just go all the way down these pages. So there's a lot you can do with this, but I find that measuring your pages on these kinds of metrics are really valuable to do so. The other thing that I wanted to go over here is you can measure sections of a website. So for example, let's say I'm on Mark's Daily Apple and I only want to look at how the blog is doing. So just because it's easier to grab the URL, nice, it's a clean URL structure, I could pull that blog subfolder in here, paste it in, and make sure it's going to default to prefix, which is where we want it to be, and go for it. So you're going to see a lot of different metrics here. We're looking at backlinks right now. So looking at the blog, you can see, wow, there's only like 30 domains linking to it, but as many as 3,000 links. Maybe that's a little bit out of the ordinary, so you'd want to look at that. Organic search. Because Ahrefs, I mean, it's a great tool, but it doesn't crawl everywhere. Clearly, this didn't go from 0 to 1,600 in a day. So we don't have a lot of data on this site, but we have a good amount of keyword data. This is not very encouraging for Mark's Daily Apple. The fact that there's only, 40 keywords that are being ranked right now for the site, chances are there's opportunities to kind of pivot strategy to, for the blog at least, to make those adjustments. And this is way helpful for the site as a whole. So if I were to just switch this back to domain, which is where we started here, go back to organic search. This is good to validate how much your content is doing. They've clearly done something right in the past. What is that? In the past, I guess Q1 of this year. So they've ramped stuff up. But seeing history like this is helpful to know how your content is performing. The same with total ranking keywords. Really the same principle applied there. Other attributes are social shares. Now, Ahrefs will let you, look at top content as far as social shares. It'll give you things like its referring domains, the amount of traffic, the amount of social shares. I think social shares are good to measure if you care about social shares. So that's my nice way of saying I don't really care about social shares. It's just something that's so indirect to SEO that for an SEO strictly campaign, it's not something that I care to track or benchmark against. And finally, maybe the most important is just backlinks that we're going to want to keep taking a look at here. That's something that we've gone over quite a bit in the previous section, so I won't spend too much time here anymore. So to summarize, deliverables produced, rarely if ever should this be a success metric. I've never heard anyone say, my campaign hit it out of the water. We got 6 blog posts live every week for 3 months. Okay, that's not a success metric. What our success metrics are everything else that I've just talked about. So top pages, that's good to know what content is rising and driving that traffic to your site. Site sectional metrics, so going into subfolders, it's validating to see what parts of your site are driving traffic. So in the case of Mark's Daily Apple, it would be useful to do this for recipes, for blog posts, for fitness content, etc., and just see where there's a lot of content or content wins coming from. Estimated organic traffic, we've gone over that metric a few times. I think it's a better metric than things like page authority or URL rating. It's just good to get a snapshot view of how much traffic that page is likely bringing in, along with ranking keywords. Social shares, again, not critical for SEO, but I'm the first one to also say it can indirectly affect other metrics. So if you like social media metrics and you feel like that's part of your skill set, don't abandon it. It's just something that I don't feel like it's strong in my wheelhouse. And backlinks, critical, like absolutely critical for any SEO campaign, page level as well as site-wide. So the question is, now what? If I were the SEO or the content person for Mark's Daily Apple, I would give attention back to previous content and retroactively update it. So I know that, or I think that, because I can see that there's a decline in organic traffic and ranking keywords. Yeah, they've done a lot this past quarter, but they were at a higher place. So what that tells me is that Google used to see their content as more valuable. Now I know they've put more content on the site. I am a regular reader of Mark's Daily Apple, so I know that there's good content on there. But other people are doing the same thing. So there's clearly a need, at least in Google's eyes, to retroactively update content. And now that we have all this data, we know what keywords they rank for, so we're able to hit content a little bit harder for what we want. The homepage clearly dominates organic traffic. Again, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but for an editorial site, you want most people coming to your site because they found a blog post or things like that. So I'd want to increase keywords or traffic to pages like these by optimizing what keywords they already rank for. Most of the top keywords are branded, not content-focused keywords. We've got Mark's Daily Apple 3 times, apple.com. I'm willing to bet they don't bring any traffic in for that, because if you see apple.com in that SERP, you're clicking it. And then this content-focused keyword. So out of these 5, only one of them is truly a content-focused keyword, and it's in position 4. But taking apple.com out of the picture, you can see that the volume potential here is unreal. So if they were able to just get that from a number 4 spot to a number 1 spot, we could be seeing huge traffic increases from just that single keyword. And their backlink profile is healthy, so there's not really a need to focus on SEO campaigns that drive more links. MarksDailyApple.com gets a good amount of links. We've got a lot of backlink data for that. So my first action item, if I were running it, is I'd start by analyzing the different subfolders on there. We just looked at blog. I might turn my attention to recipes, maybe the fitness section, and identify the lowest hanging fruit. I'd put that all in a spreadsheet and basically look at what ranks for a lot of keywords but not a lot of traffic, meaning there's potential, but it's striking distance potential, and we'd be able to move on it quickly. So the reason why I talk about all these metrics is not just to validate your strategy, it's not just to prove value, it's literally getting in a different mindset. Because if you're tracking the metrics that matter, it's going to affect your SEO campaign, whether you consciously do it or not. So my takeaway is know what metrics matter, and don't measure the ones that don't matter. Maybe just keep those in the back of your head. Vanity metrics, I think, are what's driving the cheapness in some aspects of this industry, and so that's another big takeaway that I hope to bring up here. So know what metric matters will influence your work. So measure what's needed and understand what's not.
Awesome. Thank you, PJ. Stay on the line. Let's answer a few questions. If anyone is looking at their control panel, there is an option to type in questions, and I'll just start fielding those. But PJ, love this. This is super actionable, considering for not just Mark from Mark's Daily Apple, but for everyone. Thank you. But we'll just say hi, Mark, for right now.
Hi, Mark.
Okay. Yeah. So first question. Domain authority or page authority? You didn't bring that up. Is that not important?
That's a good question. That was actually on purpose that I didn't bring it up. And the reason being is that I don't think it's a success metric. I think that domain authority, page authority, trust flow, Ahrefs versions of the same metric, they're good to know because they influence the work you do. So if you have a link building campaign, yeah, you'll want to look at domain authority, but I don't think that raising the domain authority is really the most desired metric that a website wants. It's a byproduct of all the other things.
Absolutely. Question number 2. Backlink analysis is kind of a rabbit hole. How do you balance not going too deep with knowing enough?
That's a good question. I think it really starts with the beginning of your of your campaign. So what I went over was kind of more of the week-to-week approach of the kind of touch-up level metrics that you'd want to focus on. But in starting a campaign, I'd say go down that rabbit hole, like figure out what needs to happen with your backlinks, and do the same thing with your competitors. Backlinks are a metric that Google uses to identify authority on a page or a website, but at the end of the day, it's a competitive metric. And so if you're looking at your backlinks versus your competitors' backlinks, you're going to feel more validated or more threatened depending on what's par for the course. So I'd say go down that rabbit hole at the beginning, but once you've done it, don't stress yourself out by doing it on a weekly basis. I mean, unless you're in a less favorable industry that has to deal with that a lot, I haven't really seen the need to combat that for medium-sized websites more than quarterly.
That 80-20 rule of tackle the things that will produce the biggest results.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it.
Let's talk a little bit about keywords. What is the best way to determine keywords? A little bit more on that would be, it's hard to define keywords that will either attract the biggest audience versus attract people that are most interested. So kind of that engagement score. Yeah.
So one of the reasons why I chose Mark's Daily Apple to go through it is because it's an established website. It's been around for a few years. It has a great following. And how that's helpful for your specific question is that we've got a good amount of keyword data. So we can look at some top performing or striking distance pages, preferably like content pages, that rank for maybe something like the primal diet, and realize that, like, yeah, we're I forget the spot, like spot 1 or 2 for it, but what are we, spots 4, 5, 6, etc. on? Those are keywords that you've already written the content for it, right? So like you think it's relevant, Google thinks it's relevant, but not relevant enough to get that #1 spot. So in determining keywords, I'd say the best strategy is a situation like this, where you've got a website that ranks for some good keywords, and ranks for some good keywords in positions that you can move on like today. And so you know the user intent because you've already written that post. So the challenge then comes into identifying which ones you want to muscle up for which post. So I'd say it's a really good marriage between user intent as well as the Google intent if it's keywords that you already rank for rather than just net new keywords.
Mm-hmm. And I love this question because it means that you're looking at the right things from the beginning instead of just purely search volume. You're looking for those metrics that we covered and our process that we shared in our first webinar in this series, which was Advanced Keyword Research with Paxton Gray. He walked through the process of not only vetting your data sets for quality search volume, so attracting that big audience, but also attracting the search volume that engages with your content. So we'll include a link in the show notes of this one to that webinar as well. Last question, PJ, if you were going to talk about other tools, I know that you expressed your love of Ahrefs and you talked about that tattoo that I will be expecting that you're getting soon. If you were to maybe offer up other tools, what would those be?
So I'd say really any native analytics that you have. So Google Analytics is huge. I could have done a presentation just this length on the same kind of thing for Google Analytics, but that'll give you information like time on site, new users, bounce rates, and things like that that are going to help validate your SEO campaigns beyond just pure sessions. Also, Google Search Console is a solid tool to measure a lot of SEO success. Google Search Console will let you know if your pages are being indexed. It'll give you, it'll unhide a lot of data that Google Analytics will hide from you as far as queries. So I would say those tools and you can swap Google Analytics out with Site Catalyst if that's your thing. But a native analytics and then the Search Console account would be the next two tools I'd recommend.
Awesome, awesome. So that is probably the time we have. Now, as a reminder, you'll receive an email with a link to this recording and deck by end of day tomorrow, if not sooner. And thank you, PJ, for sharing all those really expert insights. Now, the next webinar will be focusing on blocking spam efficiently in Google Analytics and why this is important. Now you know from what PJ shared what metrics to track and measure it against. We want to make sure that your data sets are free from the unwanted and unnecessary extra spam, basically spam data. So in this webinar, we'll be focusing on how to set that up in Google Analytics so that Google Analytics can do the heavy lifting and provide ultimately peace of mind that comes from pulling clean and accurate reports. And this one is going to be taught by Campaign Manager and Google Analytics expert Barrett Dastruff. So I dropped a link to where you can register for that in the chat bar. That should be showing up for you, but that will be May 9th. And we'll also include that in the email follow-up, so all the registration details via email. And that's what we have for today. We hope this was super helpful. And if you have questions, comments, concerns, feel free to hit us up at 90 Summit Floor. And until next time, have a wonderful day.